Good morning, everyone. This is Naishat Gadani coming to you from Melbourne. And today is our 134th episode. And today we are talking about job networking to land a next role. And who can we get best than Don Graham? Don Graham is a career director at Wharton Business School. I know the most coveted business school. A lot of people put that in their LinkedIn profile as well, that I'm a Wharton graduate as well. So it's a very prestigious business school, and she is a career director there. But more importantly, also that she has written a book called The Switchers, and I came across her book as well as her TED talk, which is a fantastic one. We'll put the link, after the show, which is what today's topic is all about, that your next job is just a conversation away. It's a topic that me and Caroline has covered significantly on our career care package show around networking and referral building and approaching people strategically. But let's hear it from Don Graham today around her thinking of networking, and also in the COVID and post COVID era, what are some of the trends that she is seeing emerging? But before we get to speak to Don, let's welcome Caroline Brown.
Thanks, Nation. Dawn, it's absolutely delightful to have you here. I'm not sure what time it is in the States, but really appreciate the fact that you've taken time. I was watching your TEDx talk, and that had so many gold nuggets. And I just realized from watching it that how important it is to have a good question in networking. And one of the things that you mentioned that, to ask your friends is, what are your career goals? And I reflected, I don't actually ask that of my friends. I don't know what their career goals are. So thank you very much for sharing that on the TEDx talk. But I guess a great place to start is just if you could give people an overview of what you actually do, because I know you're a speaker, an author, a writer, and executive head of the executive career management, or an executive in career management. So I know I've jumped that up. I think it'd be better if you, I'll hand it over to you to let people know.
Yes, well, thank you both, and good morning or good evening, wherever you're watching from. I'm excited to be here because this is one of my favorite topics to speak about, and I think you can see my passion for it when you look at the number of things that I do, and it's all really tied together with career management and job search and that entire umbrella. So yes, my full-time job is the career director at the Wharton School for their executive MBA. So these are mid-career professionals who are working full-time while also completing the full-time requirements for their MBA. And where I got onto the concept of switchers, which is my book, Switchers: How Smart Professionals Change Careers and See Success, is I've noticed over the past decade that there's a trend towards people who are instead of coming back to the executive MBA to advance where they are, there's a number of people who are now looking to make a mid-career pivot, and a pretty big mid-career pivot. So, on my radio show and in my book, one of the things I talk about consistently are switchers, and I really do believe switchers are the future of work, and that if you haven't made a big switch, chances are that's going to be something you'll do in your professional career, probably more than once. So one of the hallmarks of being a successful switcher is building your network, which is where the TEDx topic came from.
It's funny about networking because, Naish mentioned we talk about it a lot. And I think the reason that we talk about it a lot is people struggle with doing it. And why do you think people fear networking so much?
I can tell you why, because I'm an introvert by nature. No one ever believes me when I say that, but it's very true. And I think we build up in our minds something about networking that it's not. We build it up as schmoozing or salesy or taking advantage of somebody, and that's really not what it is. And I think one of the things that has helped me personally is shifting my mindset around what networking is, and it's really helping others and having them help you. And one of the reasons I talk about this idea of networking and not tying it to a job search per se, but making it more of a habit is because if you think about it, the average tenure in a job is shrinking. So we're all going to be going through job changes, every 4 or 5 years. And if this is something that we're all doing, we can all help each other. So there's no need to feel vulnerable or embarrassed about asking for help. It's just that we don't do it. And you had mentioned that you don't talk about goals in your personal conversations. We don't do that either in the US. And I think that was the goal of my TEDx talk, is to make it part of normal conversation, as if, you were asking somebody for a restaurant recommendation or a recommendation for a position. I mean, we just don't talk about our careers that way. But I think if we did, we'd find that the people who already have a relationship with us, want to see us do well, they have their own circles and will likely introduce us to a person or an idea or an article or, who knows, maybe even a job, but we just don't have that conversation. So it's a very tiny shift that would open up the door to so many opportunities.
I love the story that you gave about being in the lift and just mentioning it to the guy in the lift of, I'm looking for a job at the moment. And it's funny that, because I think a lot of the really powerful opportunities come from a friendly conversation, and then you mention, I'm looking for a job, or that type of, doesn't have to be a massive sell yourself type thing. It's could be just a natural question that's at the tail end of a conversation.
I think we all need to recognize how we feel when we help somebody. I think we all love helping people. We like that feeling of, wow, I made a difference in somebody's life. And so that's why I really do believe that now is a great time to be networking, because people are looking for that. People are looking for ways to help others. And the fact is, if you make it easy for your contact to help you, of course they're going to help you. So this is another perception shift that I think we all need to get in the habit of. Of course, you're not going to ask your friend for a job because they don't have one. But if you ask your friend, hey, I'm applying to these 2 companies, I wonder if you have any contacts there. Well, that's a very easy question to answer. And chances are they do. They do have contacts there, or maybe they've read an article that they know would be helpful, or maybe they meet somebody next week who works there and they think, oh, I just had this conversation, I'm going to refer you to my friend. But this is the thing, we need to give people a piece of information to anchor to, and once we do, it's amazing how many ideas the people in our own lives probably have ready to give.
Absolutely.
Now, if you've got questions for Dawn, please drop in the comment section, and we will take that up with Dawn. Dawn, now, I think you also mentioned about the job loss that you experienced probably back in early 2000s. Tell us about that, because that was a shock, for you to receive that. You were waiting to be promoted or to have a really great opportunity, and then suddenly something happened, and I think the company probably closed down because of the scandal that it emerged from that. Tell us about that experience, and then tell us. But you also got a job through networking as well, right? Eventually as well. So tell us about that story and how, because a lot of, I'm pretty sure that, US also has seen a tremendous unemployment just in last 6 months, and even Australia is not too far. We've seen approximately 500,000 people's job being impacted by that as well. So tell us about that experience that you had.
Yeah, and I will say, if you've been laid off, if you're fearing being laid off, you're not alone. And I kind of look at it now. I know it's hard in the moment because it is terrifying, and it comes out of left field, and you feel overwhelmed, and often you have other things going on in your life. But here's what I will say from my experience. It actually put me on the trajectory for the career I have now, because I was a young professional. I had just gotten my master's degree. I was in the process of moving cross country for a new role in the company, and Arthur Andersen and Enron had the scandal that I think there's a movie or 2 about it. So I won't get into those details, but I was in the middle of going through a divorce. So I mean, it couldn't have been worse timing. And I thought to myself, here I am, a climbing young executive, and everything is gone now. And having a company that just went through a scandal on your resume really doesn't open a lot of doors. The other thing I realized was that everybody who knew me and was in my professional network had also been laid off. So they were in the same position. And I was, of course, applying frantically online, getting no bites. And it wasn't until I had that conversation in the lift where I was at my wit's end, and I said, "Oh, I've sent 3 resumes to this company. I can't get them to even acknowledge me." When the person said, "Oh, somebody at my company is married to director over there," and of course, I was. I mean, how does that happen? But we forget. And this was even before social media. So people are even more connected now. And the second I said that, he offered to pass my resume along, which he did. I got an interview 2 weeks later, which never would have happened. And I think it was really in that moment that opened my eyes that I was always a stellar performer. I always made sure I worked late and took on extra projects. And I think a lot of us do this thinking that's enough. And as an introvert, I always resisted networking because I didn't want to, it was just uncomfortable for me and I didn't know how to do it. And I thought, well, as long as I'm a good performer, that's enough. But what I realized from that experience is it's not enough. If people don't know what you do, so your brand and you're not visible, then they can't help you. And if you don't have a network that can give you ideas, you're going to miss out on a lot of the opportunities that are there, because we know not every job is advertised. So if you don't have a network, you miss out on those jobs. We also know that a lot of people apply online, so you're talking about hundreds of resumes, and even if you're stellar in that field, chances are an applicant tracking system or something else will get you knocked out of the running. So you're really putting a lot of faith into chance when you apply online. So this experience taught me all that, and I have built basically my career around those 3 things: is do stellar work and make sure you can reinvent yourself to align with the skills that the market is looking for. Build a visible brand so people know what you do, know the expertise you bring to the table, and continuously network so that you're growing your relationships. And this way, should the rug get pulled out from under you, you have a safety net at all times. And so that is really the basis I've spent the last 20 years preaching.
Just a question about the chap in the lift. Did you know him before you had that conversation?
He was a neighbor, so casually, it was, it was one of those, like, I've seen you in the building and see you from time to time. So it was, and I think we have a lot of people like this, people who we see on occasion, we're friendly with. I mean, and we don't think to ask them because, I don't want to dump my problems on you, or I don't, I'm embarrassed because I got laid off, or, I feel vulnerable because I don't have a job right now. And I think that's a really big challenge, is that we tie our worth to being employed. And that's not where our worth comes from. Our worth comes from the experiences, the education, the, everything we've done, our volunteer work, our community work, everything we've done. And regardless of whether we're getting a paycheck or not, that is still our brand. We are still that person. If you get laid off tomorrow, all of that experience and expertise doesn't fade away. So I think we need to embrace that and not feel like because we're not tied to a paycheck at the moment that we're less than. And I think if we can switch our mindset in that way and recognize that everybody around us is going to be in a job search at some point, and we can help each other, it just changes everything.
I'm curious about, because I think networking's based on trust. So somebody needs to trust you and like you and to refer you. How do you quickly build up that trust with people? Say if you're for example, meeting somebody in a lift or on the beach or at the petrol station or whatever. What are your tips around that?
So I think one of the easiest ways to build trust is through commonalities. And, if you get a warm introduction, that could be a very quick way to build trust. And that's why I say start with the people you know who already trust you, want to see you succeed. Because if somebody who really knows you well refers you to somebody else, you already have some instant credibility through that mutual contact. If that's not the case, I always tell people to think about, so when I was in Australia a couple of years ago, I met somebody just on public transit or something, who was from Philadelphia. And I felt like I had instant connection to this person, because here I am on the other side of the world, and I met somebody who knows restaurants I know and knows streets I know. And so I do think that if you have a commonality, for example, maybe you went to the same university, or maybe you have a similar hobby or something like that, I think that is a great way to kind of start building trust. So it doesn't always have to be about the job or the career. It can be because you both like a particular sport, or you both like a show, or you both follow a certain thought leader. And I think if you can find those commonalities, that's a great way to build trust quickly. But then you do have to follow up. I think a lot of people take a one and done approach. And if you look at networking that way, you're going to find that you're not really building those relationships. And whatever you get in that first meeting is all you're going to get. And I think that really undermines the true value of networking.
Absolutely.
We could have a first question around what's your advice on dealing with ghosting when you are networking? And I'm pretty sure that's something that happens.
Because I thought we were starting to talk about dating, and I'm like, no, I can't. I have nothing. So ghosting, yeah, it happens a lot, and I think people, if you're applying for a job and you're talking about ghosting, I honestly think the behavior. I used to be a corporate recruiter, and I really do believe that our manners have totally gone out the window here about realizing what it feels like to be a candidate, and on the other side waiting for a response. And I've seen it happen where people have gone to 1, 2, 3 in-person interviews and never hear again. And so I think it happens. I think it happens in networking too. Maybe you meet somebody and you have a great conversation, and they say they're going to pass your resume around, but then you never hear from them. And in those cases, I think people feel like sometimes they feel obligated. So I know you had Steve Dalton on this session, and he talked about obligate. And so if you haven't read his book, it's a great book, 2-Hour Job Search. But I do think some people really truly want to help, and then there's some people who just feel obligated or can't say no. So they'll have a quick meeting with you, and then they'll move on. And here's a good way to know if somebody truly wants to help you, or if they're going to just be an obligate and kind of fade away. If they say to you, let me have your resume and I'll pass it around, unless there's a very specific job, and often there's not because you're just networking, I usually say don't give them your resume, but rather say, I really appreciate that, and there might come a time where there's a specific job and that's going to be really helpful. But what would be more helpful to me right now is an introduction to someone in the accounting department or someone who knows X. And if they don't follow through on that request, quickly they're an obligate, and you don't have to worry about, being ghosted because this was their way of sort of just ending things. So the other option is really gets you nothing, because they have your resume and you don't know what they're doing with it, and you're thinking, are they doing anything with it? And it's awkward. So I do think that we've come to a place where people don't like conflict, so they just disappear.
It's funny with Steve's book. I love he had the curmudgeons, the people that the boosters, who are the terrific people, and then the obligates. And he said that the obligates are the most dangerous because you think that they're going to be very helpful. But what I love about it too is actually labeling it depersonalizes it. So, I've got one of those. That's okay. It's not about me. Here's how and then how to manage that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's it. We tend to hang on to the obligates, not realizing they're obligates, when we have a number of people around us who would be very happy to help us if we gave them a specific ask. So I think if you take that Steve Dalton approach to your networking, you'll find that you waste a lot less time and you find the people who are really truly open to helping you.
Excellent. Nesh, you look like you're about.
Yeah, one of the thing is around the COVID times and in the post-COVID times. How do you see the networking concept changing? Do you see that changing, dramatically? Do you see that we have seen one trend at least in Australia, that people are becoming more and more empathetic to the what job seekers are currently going through. We've seen a lot of new ways of thinking has come up, a lot of new startups, people who are genuinely out there to help people as well, and people lean on each other right now at these times. What are your observations on, do you think that's going to continue? Because you you know one of the things is, I feel that LinkedIn is taking away some of those conversational part, because now you're relying more on sending messages to LinkedIn. You can hide behind the computer but not have the courage to pick up a phone call and talk to people, which I believe that's one of the most efficient way of you really forwarding your cause rather than sending messages. What are your observations on the new trends emerging after COVID?
Right. So I think we're all learning right now. Some of the things that I've seen, I agree, people are very much open to helping because they're seeing in real time right in front of them either themselves or people they directly interact with who've been impacted, and they want to do anything they can to help. So that's been a great thing. I've also seen a lot of people connecting with dormant contacts, which is a great way to network. And so dormant contacts are those people who maybe you once had a good relationship with, maybe colleagues from a few jobs ago, or maybe your university roommates or neighbors or something, and people are reconnecting because they're so hungry for connection because we're cooped up in our homes right now. So I think that is an awesome trend, because these are individuals who you already have trust and a relationship with. It's just about rekindling it. And you've both gone on to different jobs and to experience different things. So you're bringing two circles together in terms of networking that can be so incredibly valuable. So I think that is a very good trend. I think it is challenging for people to network via Zoom and other types of technology. Even as an introvert, it's not comfortable for me. There's 20 people on a Zoom meeting to speak up. It's the same as being in a room full of 20 people. It doesn't feel that different. So I think we need to look for strategies that really help us. And it's funny because a lot of conferences that we have that we go to regular are now moving to Zoom. So I'm putting together tips around how can you get the most out of conferences. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is just not multitask. And I know people watching right now are multitasking because that's what we do. That's what humans do. Our brains want to be engaged in a lot of things. So one of the things we do is not multitask. Another thing you could do is follow up. And I know people have back-to-back Zoom meetings, but I think you need to take some notes and say, who are maybe 2 or 3 people I want to follow up with and learn more about, and then make that effort to make the connection. I think we also need to link in with people. A lot of times what I will do, if I know there's a lot of people that I want to connect with, I'll just take a screenshot of who's online so that I can remember who's there, and then the people I interacted with, I can easily find them on LinkedIn and connect with them and send them a personalized note saying, hey, your comment about this topic really was insightful. I'd like to stay in touch. So I think there are things we can do. We just have to take that extra step to make the technology work for us.
It's funny because I think people don't do that a lot of the time. I don't know if you might have seen it, when you're a speaker, you often remember the people that come up to you after you've spoken and said, that's a fantastic speech, and I really, that point really resonated with me, and then you've got that start of a connection. But I think, like you say, it's just the fact that you are doing it makes you stand out just for the act of doing it.
It's so true. I think a lot of people look at webinars or situations like this, like almost like passively, like they're watching a TV program, and when it's over, it's over. And so I think we need to shift that mindset. So anybody who's listening, please reach out to me on LinkedIn with a personal message or follow me, because I'd love to stay connected. But yeah, I think we just need to do that. We need to plan time, whether it's in our calendars or whatever, to say, all right, I want to spend 15 minutes at the end of the day going through my meetings or my conferences or my events and saying who are a few people, not everybody, you don't have to connect with everybody, but who are a few interesting people or memorable things that I jotted down that I'd like to reach out. And if somebody was particularly helpful, maybe we want to suggest a 15-minute phone call. Hey, we didn't have enough time to really flesh out that topic, but I love where you were going with it. Can we spend 15 more minutes? And we have to be proactive in this sense, because it's too easy now to shut down the laptop and walk away and forget it.
What about your tips as an introvert? Sorry, Naishal, I know that you're about to ask a question, but so introverts, like, how do you motivate yourself as an introvert to network? Because there's that saying around, there's Zoom gloom, where it feels so much at the end of the day to not want to get back online. So as an introvert, what would be your tips to maintain that energy and that positivity and keep going?
Yeah, and I will be the first to admit, I know when all of this happened, people were talking about Zoom happy hours and having lunch over Zoom, and I'm saying, oh, heck no. That sounds awful to me. I just want to be alone and eat, and I don't want to be on a Zoom happy hour. But I think, it goes to, okay, that's not a good fit for me. What is a good fit for me? So I think we all have to kind of look at it and say what's going to work. And I, as somebody who tries to practice what I preach, I try and take that next step, because I think that's actually one of the easiest things we can do. A lot of people say I don't have time for networking, but if you're on a meeting like this, it's not really that difficult to take a few notes and then send a follow-up on social media. Or, if somebody mentions a book or a website or a TEDx, to watch that and connect with the person. And I just think we need to schedule that in the day. And that's what I do. I make sure that I put time in and that I follow up, and I don't look at events as a one and done. I say, if I'm going to attend this, I'm going to invest my time in this meeting, then I'm going to fully invest and try and see what I can learn and who I can meet.
Fantastic.
Now, about the follow-up, because I think that's very critical. If we can, I've observed that a lot of people give up very quickly too. So, for example, somebody approaches someone and says, "Yeah, what? Send me your resume, or I'll introduce you to them," and they are following up, and people give up, pretty quickly. That's what my observation is. A lot of my clients say, "Oh, I've connected with people. I've sent them the connection request. They've accepted it, and I've sent them a message, and that's it." I said, "But that's your responsibility to poke them again and again with professionalism, politeness. It's fine. It's fine. If you're running your business, you would do that. Just because you're job seeking doesn't necessarily mean that you should stop doing that kind of activity." Tell us what's behind this, because I feel that those people, we have had success in getting a certain guest speaker to come on, just because I kept on poking to make sure, all professionally, no stalking on Instagram or Facebook or
I
anywhere.
know, you sent me 7 messages, and I was like, fine.
That's right.
The police are about to arrive, Naish. That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But here's what I will say, and I can use your outreach as an example, because so 2 things. So putting my psychologist hat on, as a licensed psychologist, I incorporate this into my work a lot, and I think people don't realize that you do feel very vulnerable and exposed when you reach out to somebody you don't know. And then when you don't hear back, of course, the human brain goes into this negative mode of, oh, they think I'm silly, all of these things that we're just making up in our heads. So it's really difficult if you're in that negativity, to reach out again and put yourself out there again. I think that's why people don't do it. But what I would say is you're going to get a better response if you invest in them first. And so watch their TEDx talk. I mean, that was the first thing that caught my eyes. You invested in me, you watched my TEDx, you told me a couple of points that stood out to you. And yeah, I mean, I put a lot of work into that. So when somebody recognizes that, of course, I'm going to be open to speaking to them. So if you're looking for somebody to get back to you, take their class or follow their social media, or if they're in an article or they wrote an article, read a couple of their articles. And, see, there's so much online today that it's really hard not to be able to find some things you can invest in. And I will tell you, if somebody reaches out to me and says, I bought your book and, I love chapter 6, of course I'm going to connect with you, versus somebody who reaches out and says, I came across your profile, it looks interesting. I mean, it's really that simple. And because we have this internet, which is full of so much information, it's really hard not to be able to find something. I mean, follow them on Twitter, like their content, share their content. There's always something you can find. And if you invest in them first, you're going to have a higher probability of them getting back to you.
Makes absolute sense. And there's no excuse, because there's so, like you say, there is so much information about people.
Too much.
I wanted to ask you a question that people dread asking, but when you're networking, people say, well, what do you do, or tell me about yourself. What's a great answer to that? What's a great structure for people to follow if they answer that?
Yeah, I'll first start with what is not a good way to answer that. And it's something we're very conditioned to do. We're very conditioned to answer with our title and our place of location or workplace where we're employed. And the reason that's not a great way is because it gives all your power away. And let's face it, people make assumptions. If I say I work at the Wharton School, which is, a top business school, the first thing people think is I'm a finance professor. I can guarantee you I am not a finance professor. If I say I'm a licensed psychologist, which is also a truth, people expect that I have a small room and a big couch and I listen to people free associate all day. I don't. So my point being is that we have to introduce ourselves with the value that we add to the market for a few reasons. One, so you don't give your power away and have somebody assume something that's not true. Excuse me. But two, because I can start a conversation now that I know a little bit about you. If I say, well, I help people who are looking to make a job change redo their resume and LinkedIn so that they can rebrand and get in front of the decision makers. And I do that as the career director at the executive program at the Wharton School. Well, now you understand a little bit about what I do, and we can actually have a conversation. And, while my profession is fairly understandable, think about when you get to a technical level and somebody says, well, I program code into Python and C++, and you're like, what? That's pretty much the end of the conversation, unless you have a technical background too. But if you say, hey, those pop-ups that are really annoying that come on your screen, and I program the system so that you can override those. If you find something you can connect with the person on, like, oh, I've had that experience, I hate that, and then you can get into the details. Not only have you really helped them understand what you do, but you've opened the door to a conversation that allows that relationship to build. And so I encourage everybody, stop using your title or your company, at least not in the first sentence, but instead, what is the value add, or what is something you do that people can relate to? I mean, I could easily say, have you ever been in a job search? Pretty much everybody will say, oh my gosh, yes. And they're like, well, I help people with that, and here's where I do it. But I think that's how we need to start introducing ourselves.
I'm laughing when you say that, because sometimes, Nation and I do similar work to you in some context, and you can see it registers with people, and they're like, that'll be very useful at some point. So you're a useful person to know. So, yeah. It's a great example.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a quick story on what do you do. I was talking to one of my son's schoolmate and his dad, a few years back, and I asked his dad. We meeting for the first time. I asked him that what do you do, and he started saying that I work in IT, blah blah blah. I do this. I work with this vertical, this horizontal, blah blah blah. After 2 minutes, I said, "You sell softwares." He said, "Yes." Yes, that's what I wanted to know. I just, in my head, I'm saying you sell software, and that is fine. You don't need to impress me with saying those technical jargons because nothing made sense to me. If you say that
Yeah.
I sell softwares to educational, I sell softwares to universities, I sell softwares to hotels, and that's fine with me. I have no problem with that. But that would be more memorable for me. There's someone that I know who sells software, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and chances are you're going to meet somebody who needs software, and if you know this, you're like, oh, you should talk to this person. So it very, very true. It gives you the opportunity to make connections with others that can help others. So I do think we need to drop the jargon. And Amy Cuddy, who has been on my radio show, she's famous for the power pose. She has great research around this trust versus competence, and we're all taught to introduce ourselves with our elevator pitch and all these impressive strengths and things like that. But her research shows that if somebody doesn't trust you first, then they don't really care about all of the other stuff. So we've had it backwards. We've been teaching people to introduce themselves to be impressive when we really should be teaching them to first connect and find some commonality, find a point where you can share an experience, and then talk about your competence. So I love that you have to build trust first. And there's a great saying around that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I think that's very, very true.
Yeah, and it's that level of listening and being genuinely interested in what the other person has to say, and that type of thing, those cues around that trust. So yeah, I love that saying. It's one of my favorites.
Me too.
Yeah.
Excellent, Don. That's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for coming on our show. I think you've shared really insightful information and make it really easy and sensible for people to network and ask questions, and go around and find their next role, as well. Thank you again, Don. And we will put the link of your TEDx talk and also the Switcher book link as well in the comment section. If people have not watched it, go and watch it and also buy the book because both are absolutely amazing. Again, Don, thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you. It's great to meet you both, and I hope to see a lot of you on LinkedIn connecting.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dawn. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So if you're watching this, if you want to follow the hashtag Career Care Package, you can get updates of what's on the show, watch past shows. If you want to watch past shows, we're on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you like what you see, please subscribe. And I'm on this afternoon flying solo with Gary, who's a recruiter. So please join us and hit Gary up and me with any questions at all about interviews, resumes, LinkedIn, and your job search. So really looking forward to that. And we'll see you this afternoon.
Yes, that's right. So today we'll be back again 3 p.m. Caroline is flying the plane today afternoon solo with Gauri, and she'll be tackling all the questions about interviews and everything that you want to ask a recruiter, which you haven't. So please join in 3 p.m. Until that, please look after yourself. Stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye for now.